Just continuing on with applying the just ask method to our textbooks, I wanted just to show a few more points and make a few more questions as we go through. We left off at the continuous random variable and we started here at the probability distribution. So we're looking at how is it distributed? How do they distribute this discrete random variable? So I'm looking through here, I was mentioning this table, and then I looked over this blue part, and this blue part kind of gives us a little bit of a clue. So it's writing the probability distribution of a discrete random variable. So I could just turn that into a question and say, how do you write the probability of a DRV? That's a good question. We need to find that out. I turn over and actually we get to see the solution right here. So this tells us here's the answer in here to that question. So I keep going through. I'm going to look at the next one here, and I see the probability distribution of a discrete random variable possesses the following two characteristics. So these two characteristics are even in italics. So as you're probably guessing right now, what are the two characteristics of what are we looking at there? Just the random variable or the distribution? Distribution of the probability distribution. Correct my spelling there. Done. 1 and 2. These are a little bit more complicated. We may even want to go in and give a little bit of a cue. Memory loves cue. These questions are making us think about them, and these are our initial stages. And once we've maybe practiced answering and answering these questions, we might be able to name both of these. But we might even want to be able to look at these later on and try and find a cue that helps to think about them. Here, there's two. They give us the answers right there. Here we've got a few. We've got more italics here. It says two conditions. So these two characteristics are also called the two conditions. Maybe we can make a note of that. It might not be so important. Or we could just change these characteristics into conditions. It goes on to talk about them. We can probability. I don't really want to do too much reading. Right? I don't want to do the reading yet. All I want to do is make these questions so that I can, these will guide my reading later on. So I just want to get the questions out so then I can come back and read a bit more carefully later on. Here I notice that there's italics here again. It says mathematical formula table and a graph. So I'll read that. It said the probability distribution of a discrete random variable can be presented in the form of, boom. So here my keyword is presented. So my first one is just going to be, how can the prob, I'm just going to call it prob now on for sure, distribution. How can the prob distribution be represented? And we've got three ways: mathematical formula, table, graph. We could even say how can the probability distribution be represented, or we could say what are the three ways of presenting the probability distribution. If we go over, what do we got? We got a graph, so graphical representation. Okay, so there we go. We got bar graph. So bar graph is the graphing way. Verifying the conditions of a probability distribution. Here's an example of verifying it. So we could even turn this here into a question. We're saying, how do we verify the conditions of a prob test? Keep reading. Obviously there's the solution on how we do it, and it gives us some practice on how to do it. Again, we could even put in how do we graph it. We know that's the bar graph, but we can put that in there. How do we graph it? We put the probability on the y-axis and the variable itself on the x-axis. Finding the probabilities of events for a discrete random variable. This is interesting. This here could be a good question here. It's got 4 parts. We could just put down this as being one of our main questions and continue on that way. constructing a probability distribution. How do we construct a probability distribution? The solution is here, there's steps. This one here could be a bigger answer. We might have to go in and actually look at the steps of these. But it looks like we've got to use a tree diagram. How do you construct a probability distribution? Well, you have to be able to first identify the parts of, well, use a tree diagram. What are the parts? And then have a look at how many times you're going to run that trial. Again, these can all be, these blue parts here, so use the keys that are in your textbook. They're all a little bit different. So here, this is a good sign of a good question. Here is our solution to that question. Here, these are just seem to be exercises, so it's giving us a little bit of practice, so we could use those later on. Here at the moment, we're trying to prepare a reading, so we're going to skip over those. Mean of a discrete random variable. So again, boom, what is the mean of the discrete random variable? I moved on. And get ready to, I'll change these back to black. A little bit of formatting while we're here. Black. How do you calculate the mean of a DRV? Next one is, let's have a read. We've got some denoted, we've got this symbol. We've got EX. Having a look, we could say denoted is a good word. How is the mean denoted? What is the expected value? What is the notation for the expected value? Again, going through. Calculating and interpreting the mean of a discrete random variable. Boom. How do you calculate the mean? That was what is the mean of a when we're talking, especially in math, maybe what is the mean or how to calculate the mean. This here could, it's kind of the same thing too. Here is another good word that we could use as well, is interpreting. How do we, so yes, we calculate it, but what the heck does it mean? How do we interpret the mean? So this here could be also be excellent questions that we could be writing down. It tells us how to do it right here. It shows us exactly what it is, and then it gives us some sort of explanation of it as well. Now that's going to be it for applying this Just Ask tool to our questions. Doesn't take too long to come up with a lot of questions. We can either use these as we might practice solving problems too, but we also want to practice the concepts. How can we understand the concepts in the right context? So this can guide our reading. It can be beneficial for preparing for an exam. It can be excellent for preparing before we go to a class. This here can help keep our attention. There's lots of benefits to applying this. It helps us to actively engage with the material, and it keeps our attention where it makes things a little bit more interesting than just reading word for word, where we can tune out quite easily with our puppy dog brain, that we can change from topic to topic. If I'm just looking for one specific answer, it's very easy. Okay, just go look for the answer. Okay, what's next? That's going to be all for this. I'm definitely recommending that you give this a go, and there will be ample chances for you to apply this technique. Remember, the key to learning is to just start asking questions. Thanks a lot. See you in the next video.